Hey guys, tonight we delve into the very beginnings of a monarch who would not only witness but profoundly shape an era of unprecedented change. Queen Victoria. Imagine, for a moment, stepping back into the dimly lit corridors of Kensington Palace, long before the grand imperial parades or the stern portraits we so often associate with her. We're going to walk through the quiet, almost hushed world of a young princess, Alexandrina Victoria, and discover how a childhood, far from any fairy tale, prepared her for a destiny she couldn't fully comprehend. You're about to be immersed in the early 19th century, a time of flickering gaslight, horse-drawn carriages on cobbled streets, and whispers of revolution still echoing from across the channel. It's a world where power was a very real, often heavy, mantle, and honestly, given the political intrigues, the rather rudimentary state of medicine, and the sheer unpredictability of life for even the highest in the land, you probably wouldn't survive this as a royal back then without a will of iron and a fair bit of luck. It wasn't all tiaras and tea parties, you know, more like strategic marriages and hoping your doctor wasn't too fond of leeches. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps keep these late-night historical wanderings going. And, as always, I'd love to see where you're joining from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's fascinating to think of us all connected by these stories, despite the miles and time zones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The soft patter of rain against the tall windows of Kensington Palace is a familiar sound, a gentle, rhythmic drumming that seems to absorb the silence of your rooms. It's late, well past the hour when the rest of London has dimmed its lamps and settled into the quiet embrace of a cool evening. You, however, are often awake, not always by choice. The glow from a single oil lamp on your writing desk casts long, dancing shadows across the floral wallpaper, the figures in the pattern sometimes seeming to shift and watch in the flickering light. This is your world, a gilded cage meticulously constructed by your mother, the Duchess of Kent, and her ambitious comptroller, Sir John Conroy. They call it the Kensington system, a set of rules designed, they say, for your protection, for your moral and intellectual development. But as you push a stray strand of hair from your forehead, your quill scratching softly on the pages of your journal, you can't help but feel it's more about control. You are Princess Alexandrina Victoria, though you prefer to be called Victoria, a name that feels a little more your own in this tightly managed existence. Every minute of your day is scheduled, every interaction monitored. You're never truly alone, even now. You know your mother sleeps in the adjoining room, the door always open, a visible symbol of her constant, suffocating presence. It's a known fact that Victoria was not allowed to walk downstairs without holding an adult's hand until she became queen. A rule that perfectly encapsulates the intense supervision she endured. Imagine that, teetering on the edge of womanhood, yet still treated like a toddler on the grand palace staircases. Not exactly ideal for those teenage leave-me-alone moments. Was it? The rain seems to sigh with you, a gentle commiseration from the world outside your carefully curated bubble. The distant rumble of a carriage on the cobbled street below occasionally breaks the quiet, a reminder of the bustling city just beyond these walls. a city you rarely experience with any true freedom. Your lessons are many: languages, history, music, drawing, and you apply yourself diligently. But your companions are few, carefully chosen, and usually adult. Friendships with children your own age are scarce, fleeting things, easily curtailed if they don't fit the system. Sir John Conroy, with his confident stride and watchful eyes, is a constant presence. He sees himself as your future private secretary, perhaps even more. There's an oily sort of confidence about him that sets your teeth on edge, a feeling you carefully conceal beneath the polite deference expected of you. Academic circles remain divided about the true nature and extent of Conroy's influence over your mother, and how deeply his ambitions shaped the atmosphere of your upbringing. Did he genuinely believe he was acting in your best interests? Or was it all a carefully orchestrated power play? The answer, like so much from that time, is shrouded in the complexities of personal ambition and the nuances of relationships that diaries only partly reveal. You remember your father, the Duke of Kent, only as a warm, vague memory. He died when you were just a baby. His passing set in motion a chain of events that now places you uncomfortably close to the throne. Your uncles, well, they haven't been particularly successful in producing legitimate heirs. King George III, with his extravagance and scandals, is long gone. Now, his brother, King William IV, sits on the throne. He's an aging monarch, and his own children, sadly, did not survive. It's a bit like a royal game of musical thrones, and the music has been definitely slowing down with each passing year. You are the heir presumptive. The weight of those words, heir presumptive, feels heavier than any crown you can imagine. Sometimes, late at night like this, you trace the royal coat of arms on the cover of a book, wondering what it truly means to embody the hopes and expectations of an entire nation, an empire even. Your relationship with your mother is complicated. You love her, of course, as a daughter loves her mother. But it's a love tangled with resentment, with a desperate yearning for independence. She is, in many ways, as much a prisoner of Conroy's influence as you are of their system. You see the fear in her eyes sometimes, the uncertainty, but she clings to Conroy's guidance with a tenacity that baffles and frustrates you. He has convinced her that the rest of the royal family, particularly your uncle King William, wishes you ill, that they seek to undermine your position. It's a narrative that isolates you further, drawing the walls of Kensington even tighter. The only true, uncomplicated affection you seem to receive is from your beloved spaniel, Dash, who often lies at your feet. His soft snores a comforting counterpoint to the rain and the scratching of your pen. He, at least, demands nothing but a gentle hand and a warm lap. If only human relationships were so simple. Tonight, the air feels particularly heavy, the silence more profound. You've heard whispers, of course. The king has been unwell. News travels, even within these secluded walls, through hushed conversations between servants, through the grave expressions of your tutors. You try to push the thoughts away, to concentrate on the Latin declensions you're supposed to be memorizing. But your mind keeps drifting. What if the question hangs in the air, unspoken, yet overwhelmingly present? The lamplight flickers, and for a moment, the room feels colder. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders, a sudden chill unrelated to the damp night air settling upon you. This isn't just about a change in your lessons or a new set of rules. It's about a seismic shift in your entire existence. a future rushing towards you whether you feel ready for it or not. You try to imagine what it would mean to step out from behind your mother's shadow, from Conroy's suffocating plans. The thought is both exhilarating and terrifying. A little too much responsibility for someone whose main social event is a supervised walk in the garden. Perhaps a sudden, sharp rapping at your chamber door shatters the quiet. It's too early for the morning routine, too abrupt for a casual inquiry. Dash lifts his head, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Your heart leaps into your throat. Before your mother can even rise from her bed in the adjoining room, the door creaks open. Standing there, silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor, are two solemn figures, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Howley, and the Lord Chamberlain, the Marquis Conyngham. Their faces are etched with gravity, their formal attire seeming out of place in the quiet intimacy of your lamplit room. You rise slowly from your chair, your journal slipping unheeded to the floor. The rain outside seems to have paused, holding its breath. The distant city sounds have faded. There is only this room, these men, and the unspoken news that hangs between you. Lord Conyngham bows deeply. The Archbishop's gaze is kind, yet sorrowful. Your Royal Highness. Lord Conyngham begins, his voice low and measured. It is with the deepest regret that we must inform you. His Majesty King William IV passed away peacefully at Windsor Castle earlier this evening. The words settle in the stillness. Passed away. The king is dead. And then, the Archbishop steps forward, his voice gentle but clear, echoing slightly in the hushed space. Consequently, he says, his eyes meeting yours, Your Royal Highness is now Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Queen. The word is so small, yet it feels vast, impossibly large. You are just 18. 18 years of sheltered existence, of rules and restrictions. And now this. You look at their serious faces, at the dawn that is just beginning to touch the edges of the curtains with a faint, gray light. The rain has stopped completely, as if the night itself has exhaled. You are Alexandrina Victoria. Yes, but in this instant, in this quiet, lamplit room, with the scent of old books and damp wool in the air, you are more. You are the monarch. A wave of something washes over you. Not fear, not entirely, not excitement, perhaps a profound sense of awe, of the immense, almost sacred duty that has just fallen upon your young shoulders. You take a small breath, the first breath of your new life, the first breath of a queen. The Archbishop's words, "You are now queen," still resonate in the quiet air of your chamber, the faint light of dawn now clearly outlining the window panes, promising a day unlike any you have ever known. You feel a strange calmness settle over you, a sense of clarity amidst the emotional tremor. Your first instinct, surprisingly, isn't panic, but a quiet resolve. There is work to be done. You incline your head gracefully to the Archbishop and Lord Conyngham, a silent acknowledgement of the immense news they've delivered. The rain has indeed stopped, and in its place, a new kind of stillness envelops Kensington, the stillness of a world holding its breath, waiting for your first royal decree. Your immediate request is a simple one, yet it speaks volumes of your yearning for autonomy. You ask for your bed to be moved out of your mother's room and into a chamber of your own. A request you make with a quiet firmness that allows for no argument. For 18 years, you have not spent a single night away from her watchful presence. This small act, this claiming of your own sleeping space, is your first taste of true independence. Finally, a chance to choose your own. Well, perhaps not wallpaper just yet, but at least to not have someone hovering while you pondered the very idea of it. It's a symbolic gesture, the first gentle severing of the Kensington system's tight reins. Your mother, when she learns of it, is visibly distressed, but the decision of a queen, even a brand new one, carries a weight that even she and Sir John Conroy cannot easily contest. The quiet satisfaction of that small victory is a warm ember glowing within you as the palace begins to stir around you with a new, urgent energy. Later that morning, you preside over your first Privy Council meeting, a sea of older, experienced men, statesmen who have advised your uncles, now looking to you, a young woman barely out of her teens. You enter the grand room, the polished wood gleaming under the light from tall windows, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of old documents and beeswax. You are dressed simply in black mourning attire, your youth a stark contrast to the sober gravity of the assembly. There are hushed whispers, a rustle of papers as you take your seat at the head of the long table. You speak your first official words as monarch, your voice clear and composed, surprising many with its steadiness. You express your grief for the late king, your uncle, and then your determination to dedicate your life to the welfare of your country and its people. There is ongoing scholarly discussion regarding the extent to which Victoria consciously crafted her early public image in these initial days versus how much was shaped by her advisors, like Lord Melbourne, who would soon become a pivotal figure in your life. Yet, those present at that first council meeting would later remark on your remarkable poise, a natural dignity that seemed to belie your years and sheltered upbringing. The days that follow are a whirlwind. London is abuzz with the news of its young queen. There's a palpable sense of excitement, of a fresh start. You are the dew of youth, as one observer romantically puts it, a symbol of hope and renewal after a succession of aging or controversial kings. Crowds gather outside the palace gates, eager for a glimpse of you. When you drive out in your carriage, the streets are lined with cheering people, their faces upturned, full of curiosity and a surprising amount of affection. It's a strange feeling to be the object of such intense public fascination, to see your own image, sketched hastily in newspapers, appearing everywhere. The city air itself seems to crackle with a new energy. The usual nighttime sounds of distant revelry and the clatter of hooves now overlaid with conversations about the Queen, about Victoria. Preparations for your coronation begin almost immediately. A monumental undertaking. It is scheduled for June the following year, 1838. Westminster Abbey, that ancient heart of English and British monarchy, becomes the focus of immense activity. Seating is built, regalia is polished, guest lists are drawn up, encompassing nobility from across Europe and dignitaries from your ever-expanding empire. The city hums with the anticipation of the grand spectacle. You are consulted on details, of course, but much of it is guided by centuries of tradition, a complex tapestry of ritual and symbolism designed to affirm your divine right and your solemn commitment to your people. There are fittings for robes of velvet and ermine, discussions about the music, the procession. It's a far cry from your quiet evenings with Dash and your journal, though you still cling to those moments of solitude whenever you can find them. The lamplight, a comforting presence in your new, much grander apartments at Buckingham Palace, to which you have now moved, another decisive step away from Kensington's shadows. Then, finally, the day arrives, June 28th, 1838. Dawn breaks over London, not with the gentle patter of rain you knew so well at Kensington, but with a clear sky, a promise of a brilliant summer day. The city is already alive, a vast, expectant crowd thronging the streets from Buckingham Palace to the Abbey. The air is filled with the pealing of church bells, the distant sound of military bands, and an undercurrent of excited chatter that seems to make the very ground vibrate. You feel a flutter of nerves, a deep sense of the history thrumming beneath this day. You are dressed in white satin and crimson velvet, the weight of your robes already a precursor to the heavier symbols of monarchy you will soon bear. Your journey to Westminster Abbey is a slow procession through a canyon of cheering humanity. Faces blur, hands wave, handkerchiefs flutter like so many white birds. The noise is immense, a wave of sound that washes over your open carriage. You try to take it all in, to meet the eyes of your people, to offer a smile that conveys both gratitude and a serene confidence you don't entirely feel. Inside, however, your heart is beating a steady rhythm against your ribs, a counterpoint to the martial drums and the roar of the crowd. It's a long way from the quiet gardens of Kensington, where your most daring adventure was perhaps sneaking dash an extra biscuit. Westminster Abbey rises before you, its ancient stones basking in the sunlight, a silent, formidable witness to centuries of royal hopes and sorrows. As you step from the carriage, a hush falls momentarily over the closest spectators, followed by a renewed wave of cheers. Inside, the Abbey is a breathtaking spectacle. Sunlight streams through the stained glass windows, painting vibrant lozenges of color on the ancient flagstones and the assembled guests, peers in their coronets and robes, ladies in glittering jewels, foreign ambassadors in their formal attire. The air is cool despite the summer heat outside, tinged with the scent of old stone, beeswax, and perhaps a faint trace of incense or, more likely, the subtle perfume of countless flowers and herbs brought in to adorn the sacred space. The soaring arches and vaulted ceilings seem to reach towards heaven, amplifying the sounds of the organ and the choir, whose voices rise in powerful, uplifting anthems. The ceremony itself is long, nearly 5 hours, a complex sequence of oaths, anointings, and investitures. It was the ultimate endurance test, probably more grueling than any modern marathon, and with much heavier headgear. You listen intently as the Archbishop of Canterbury leads the service. Your response is clear and unwavering. There's a solemnity to the proceedings that is deeply moving, a tangible sense of connection to the monarchs who have come before you, who have knelt on this very spot, taken these same vows. Yet, for all its grandeur and meticulous planning, the coronation is not without its small, humanizing blunders. It's a widely recorded historical fact that the coronation was somewhat poorly rehearsed, leading to several awkward moments. The coronation ring, for instance, is mistakenly forced onto your wrong finger, causing you considerable pain, which you endure with stoic grace. At another point, an elderly peer, Lord Rolle, much to everyone's and probably his own surprise, tumbles dramatically down the steps while attempting to pay homage. Your genuine concern as you rise to help him endears you further to those who witness it. Proof that even royal events of immense state importance can have their oops moments, like a divine blooper reel. The most significant moment, of course, is the anointing with holy oil, a deeply spiritual ritual that sets you apart, consecrating you to your role. And then, the climax, the Archbishop, his hands steady, lifts St. Edward's crown, the ancient symbol of sovereignty. For a moment, it hovers above your head, glittering in the shafts of light, heavy with gold and jewels and the weight of history. Then, gently, it is lowered. The fit is not perfect. No crown truly is, perhaps. But as it settles, a mighty shout erupts from the assembled congregation. Vivat Regina Victoria, long live Queen Victoria. Trumpets blare, bells peal, and outside, cannons fire and salute. In that instant, under the gaze of thousands, with the ancient stones of the abbey around you and the cheers of your people echoing, you are truly, unequivocally, the Queen. A wave of profound emotion washes over you, humility, determination, and an overwhelming sense of duty. The young girl from Kensington is gone, replaced by the monarch of a nation on the cusp of an extraordinary age. As you walk out of the abbey, the crown now firmly in place, the orb and scepter in your hands, you step not just into the sunlight of a London afternoon, but into the dawn of the Victorian era. The night of your sheltered youth has truly ended, and a new, long day of reign has begun. The echoes of Long Live Queen Victoria from your coronation day still seem to linger in the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, a constant, subtle reminder of the immense journey you've embarked upon. The weight of St. Edward's crown was immense, yet it was the invisible weight of expectation, of responsibility, that you carry with you into the quiet of these palace nights. The city outside hums its own nocturnal tune, the distant clatter of late-night carriages, the occasional shout of a street vendor closing up shop, sounds that filter softly through your tall windows, draped now in heavy silks. You are queen. Yes, but you are also young, navigating a complex world of politics and protocol, and in these early days of your reign, you find a steadying hand in your Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne. He becomes a father figure, a wise mentor, his calm demeanor and gentle guidance a comforting presence in the often stiff formality of court. He spends hours with you, explaining the intricacies of government, the nuances of parliamentary debate, the delicate art of diplomacy. He's like the ultimate wise old owl, if owls wore impeccably tied cravats and gave surprisingly good advice on whom not to invite to state dinners. You sit with him in your lamplit study, surrounded by stacks of official papers, the scent of ink and old parchment filling the air, and you listen. You learn. He treats you with respect, but also with an understanding of your youth and inexperience, never patronizing, always encouraging. These evening tutorials, so to speak, become a cornerstone of your early queenship. But the political landscape is rarely smooth. A significant early test of your will comes with what history would call the bedchamber crisis. When Lord Melbourne's government resigns, and Sir Robert Peel, the Tory leader, is asked to form a new one, he requests that you dismiss some of the ladies of your bedchamber, who are wives and relatives of Melbourne's Whig party. To you, these women are your friends, your closest companions in the often lonely palace environment. The request feels like an intrusion, a political maneuver to control your personal household. You refuse, your youthful resolve hardening into a surprisingly firm defiance. It was essentially a 19th century HR dispute, but with more tiaras and the potential to topple a government. No pressure. Peel, unable to command your confidence under these circumstances, declines to form a government. And Melbourne, much to your relief, returns to office. It's a victory for you, a demonstration of your burgeoning strength, but also a lesson in the delicate balance between personal preference and constitutional propriety. Even as you navigate these political waters, another, more personal matter begins to loom: large marriage. You are a young, unmarried queen. The stability of the monarchy, the succession, all point towards the necessity of a royal wedding. Your uncle, King Leopold of the Belgians, a shrewd and well-meaning matchmaker, has long been gently and sometimes not so gently advocating for his nephew. Your cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. You've met Albert before, a few years ago. He and his brother Ernest visited Kensington. You found him handsome, certainly, but perhaps a little formal, a little serious for your then teenage tastes. Your diary entries from that time note his accomplishments, his good looks. But there's no real spark, no hint of the profound connection that is to come. The soft glow of the gas lamps in your private sitting room casts a warm light on the miniatures of eligible European princes that are sometimes subtly left for your perusal. But your heart remains unstirred. Then, in October of 1839, Albert returns to England for a second visit, invited by you, perhaps more out of a sense of duty and Uncle Leopold's persistent encouragement than any great romantic anticipation. He arrives at Windsor Castle, where the court is residing. The evening air is crisp with the scent of autumn leaves, and fires crackle merrily in the hearths, warding off the chill. And this time, something is different. Perhaps you are different. You are no longer the secluded Princess of Kensington, nor the brand new queen finding her footing. You are a monarch who has tasted authority, who understands the weight of her position, and perhaps who yearns for a partner to share not just the throne, but her life. Albert seems changed too, or maybe you are simply seeing him more clearly. He is still serious. Yes. But there's a depth to his gaze, a quiet intelligence, a gentle kindness that begins to resonate with you deeply. He plays the piano beautifully, his fingers coaxing soulful melodies from the keys in the evenings, the music drifting through the castle's grand rooms. He shares your love for art, for nature, for quiet conversation. You find yourselves talking for hours, a comfortable intimacy growing between you. The lamplight catches the earnest expression on his face as he discusses philosophy or the latest scientific advancements, and you feel a warmth spreading through you that has nothing to do with the nearby fireplace. The decision, when it comes, feels both momentous and utterly natural. As the reigning monarch, protocol dictates that you must be the one to propose. Just 5 days after his arrival, on October 15th, 1839, you summon Albert to your private closet, your heart thrumming a nervous rhythm against your ribs. You are the queen of the most powerful empire on earth. Yet in this moment, you are simply a young woman about to lay her heart bare. She had to pop the question. Talk about breaking tradition. Though, when you're queen, you kind of are the tradition. Or at least, you get to set new ones. You offer him your hand, your voice perhaps a little breathless, and he accepts with a warmth and sincerity that leaves you in no doubt of his own affections. A wave of joy, pure and uncomplicated, washes over you. The weight of the empire seems to lift for a moment, replaced by a feeling of exquisite, personal happiness. Of course, the engagement is not without its challenges. Albert is a foreign prince, and there is a degree of suspicion and even hostility towards him from some quarters of Parliament and the press. Debates about his annuity, his title, his precedence are sometimes heated and unpleasant. Interpretations differ among historians concerning the precise speed and depth of Albert's initial integration into British political life, with some seeing a swift acceptance of his talents and others a more gradual, hard-won respect. But through it all, your devotion to him is unwavering. You champion him fiercely, your love a shield against the criticism. Your wedding takes place on a chilly February day in 1840 at the Chapel Royal, St. James's Palace. It's a more intimate affair than your grand coronation, but no less significant. You famously choose to wear white satin, trimmed with Honiton lace, a decision that helps to popularize the white wedding dress tradition. You also wear a wreath of orange blossoms, a symbol of fertility, instead of a crown of jewels, a choice that speaks to the personal, romantic nature of the union. The chapel is filled with flowers, their scent mingling with the faint aroma of beeswax candles. As you walk down the aisle, your gaze meets Albert's, and the world outside, the cheering crowds, the political squabbles, all seem to fade away. There is only him, his hand steady and reassuring as you join him at the altar. Married life begins with a deep, abiding affection. You are besotted with your husband, your diaries filled with rapturous descriptions of his beauty, his intelligence, his goodness. He is an angel, you write, your happiness almost childlike in its intensity. You delight in your shared routines, riding out together in the early mornings, the crisp air invigorating, the parklands of Windsor or Buckingham Palace grounds stretching before you. Evenings are often spent reading aloud to each other, or with Albert playing the organ. The rich notes filling your private apartments, a soothing soundtrack to your domestic bliss. He begins, slowly but surely, to carve out a role for himself, not as king consort, a title Parliament is initially reluctant to grant, but as your closest advisor, your confidant, your partner in every sense of the word. He is meticulous, with a keen eye for detail and a passion for reform and efficiency. He starts by reorganizing the royal household, a task that had baffled many before him, bringing order and economy to the often chaotic palace administration. He takes an interest in the arts and sciences, in improving the lives of the working classes, his mind constantly seeking ways to contribute, to make a difference. Your love for him deepens into a profound respect for his intellect and his moral compass. This isn't just a royal marriage. It's the forging of a partnership that will not only define your personal life, but will also leave an indelible mark on your reign and the nation you govern. A quiet revolution of love and intellect, unfolding within the ancient walls of the monarchy, all under the soft, watchful glow of the evening lamps. The quiet joy of your early married life with Albert soon blossoms into a new phase parenthood. The hushed, lamplit evenings spent discussing art, philosophy, and the intricate workings of your government now sometimes include softer, more domestic conversations, whispers about the future, about a nursery, about tiny hands and feet. The news of your first pregnancy is met with national rejoicing, another sign of stability, of continuity for the crown, for you. However, the experience is complex. You embrace the idea of children, of heirs to secure the Hanoverian line. But the physical realities of pregnancy are something you find rather disagreeable. The glow of the fire in your private chambers at Buckingham Palace often illuminates your face, etched with a thoughtful, perhaps even slightly weary expression as you confide your feelings to your journal, that ever-present, silent confidant. Your first child, a daughter, arrives in November 1840, Victoria, Princess Royal, affectionately known as Vicky. She is a bright, intelligent child from the start, and you adore her, of course. But your candid admissions about the less glamorous side of motherhood are quite remarkable for the time. Scholarly opinion is somewhat divided on how much Victoria's personal views on pregnancy and babies reflected typical upper-class Victorian maternal attitudes versus her unique position and personality. But you certainly didn't romanticize the process. You famously find newborns to be rather frog-like, and the whole business of being an incubator, as you once rather bluntly put it, a trying affair. Not exactly the first monarch to look at a tiny, wrinkled baby and think, "Are you sure it's meant to look like that?" Like a very small, very demanding, and often noisy potato. Still, the arrival of Vicky, and then Albert Edward, or Bertie, the future King Edward VII, born almost exactly a year later, begins the expansion of your family at a rapid pace. Victoria would go on to have 9 children with Prince Albert, a testament to a fruitful, if sometimes trying for you, union. Alice, Alfred, Helena, Louise, Arthur, Leopold, and Beatrice would follow, filling the royal nurseries with a boisterous energy that must have been a stark contrast to your own solitary childhood. Navigating the demands of being a mother to a rapidly growing brood while also being the sovereign of a burgeoning empire is no small feat. It was the ultimate 19th century working mom challenge, running an empire, managing a household, and trying to get the kids to eat their greens, all without the benefit of a decent parenting blog, or even reliable plumbing in some parts of the palace initially. Your days are a whirlwind of state boxes filled with documents needing your signature, audiences with ministers, fittings for state gowns, and then snatched moments with your children. You rely heavily on Albert, whose calm, methodical nature is an anchor in your often overwhelming world. During your pregnancies and subsequent confinements, which in the 19th century could be lengthy periods of prescribed rest, Albert steps in seamlessly, not to rule, but to ensure the smooth running of government business, preparing summaries of documents for you, drafting responses, his influence growing quietly but significantly. He becomes, in essence, your unofficial private secretary, your most trusted advisor, his desk often beside yours in the evenings, the two of you working by the companionable glow of oil lamps, the scent of his preferred subtle cologne, a comforting presence as you pore over state papers. The image of the royal family becomes a powerful symbol of domesticity and moral propriety in an age that highly valued such virtues. Your family portraits, often depicting idyllic scenes of familial bliss, are widely circulated, presenting a model for your subjects. Yet, the reality of royal child-rearing is, by modern standards, quite detached. While you feel a deep maternal love, the day-to-day care of your children falls largely to an army of nannies, governesses, and tutors. The nursery wing of the palace is a well-oiled machine, running on strict schedules. You visit your children at set times, enjoying playtime and reading to them, but the constant, immersive parenting experienced by mothers of lesser station is simply not part of your world. The soft sounds of their laughter, the patter of their feet, often reach you from a distance, a sweet but somewhat removed melody in the grand symphony of your life. Albert, with his own structured upbringing and keen interest in education, takes a very active role in planning their studies and moral development, sometimes with a Germanic strictness that you occasionally find a little too severe. The relative peace of these early family years is shockingly punctuated by a series of assassination attempts. The first, in 1840, when you are pregnant with Vicky, is particularly terrifying. A young man named Edward Oxford fires 2 pistols at your carriage as you and Albert take an evening drive near Constitution Hill. The crack of the shots, the sudden chaos, the screams of the crowd. It's a brutal intrusion of violence into your ordered world. Albert instinctively pulls you down, shielding you with his own body. Thankfully, you are unharmed, but the shock reverberates deeply. Apparently, being queen wasn't a universally popular career choice. Some folks preferred to express their feedback with more bang. Other attempts follow over the years, isolated incidents by troubled individuals. But each one underscores your vulnerability, the precariousness that lies beneath the surface of imperial grandeur. These events draw you and Albert even closer, your shared experiences forging an unbreakable bond. The distant, rhythmic hoofbeats of the household cavalry patrolling the palace grounds at night become a sound that is both a reminder of your status and, after these attempts, a source of quiet reassurance. The combination of relentless public scrutiny, the pressures of court life in London, and these frightening security threats leads you and Albert to yearn for private family retreats, places where the crown could be, if not entirely laid aside, then at least lightened. You desire somewhere you can breathe, where the children can run with a greater degree of freedom, away from the prying eyes of the world. This shared desire leads to the acquisition and development of 2 beloved homes, Osborne House on the Isle of Wight and, later, Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands. Osborne, purchased in 1845, becomes your coastal haven. Albert, with his passion for architecture and landscape design, throws himself into redesigning the existing house and then building a new, much larger one in the style of an Italian Renaissance palazzo. You can almost feel the sea breeze on your face, hear the gentle lapping of waves against the shore at Ryde as you imagine your first visits there. The air is fresh, tinged with salt and the scent of pine from the surrounding woods. Here, you and Albert can walk the private beach hand in hand, collect shells with the children, and for a little while, feel almost like a normal family. The rooms are filled with light, decorated with a more personal, less formal touch than the grand staterooms of Buckingham Palace or Windsor. Evenings at Osborne are quieter. The only sounds the distant cries of gulls and the murmur of the sea as you sit with Albert, perhaps sketching or reading, the lamps casting a soft glow on your contented faces. Balmoral, acquired in 1852, offers a different kind of escape, nestled in the rugged beauty of the Scottish Highlands. It is a place of wild, romantic landscapes, heather-clad hills, rushing rivers, ancient forests. The air here is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Albert designs a new castle in the Scottish baronial style, its turrets and granite walls blending harmoniously with the dramatic scenery. At Balmoral, you can truly shed the constraints of royalty, donning simpler clothes, going for long pony treks, sketching the breathtaking views. Albert indulges his love of deer stalking, and you enjoy the solitude and the connection with nature. The evenings are often spent around a crackling fire, the wind whistling softly outside. perhaps with the distant sound of a lone piper playing a melancholic lament. These homes become sanctuaries, essential for your well-being and for the cohesion of your growing family, places where the matriarch of an empire can also simply be a wife and mother, watching her children grow, framed against the backdrop of the sea or the mountains, under the vast, quiet expanse of the night sky. Beyond the walls of Osborne and Balmoral, beyond the carefully managed routines of your growing family and the familiar grandeur of Buckingham Palace, the very ground of Britain is shifting beneath your feet with a new, relentless rhythm. It's the rhythm of the machine, the hiss of steam, the clang of iron on iron, the undeniable transformative pulse of the Industrial Revolution, even in the quiet of your lamplit study, as you sift through state papers late into the night. The distant, muffled roar of this new age filters in, a reminder of the extraordinary era over which you preside. It was like the whole country was mainlining coffee and inventing things at triple speed. You'd go to bed, and by morning, someone had probably patented a new type of teapot or a steam-powered sock darner. The change is everywhere, altering landscapes, reshaping cities, and touching the lives of every one of your subjects, from the wealthiest industrialist to the poorest factory worker. Smoke from countless new chimneys plumes into the sky, creating a hazy veil over burgeoning cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow. The air in these urban centers is thick with the scent of coal smoke and industry, a stark contrast to the clean, crisp breezes of Balmoral or the salty tang of Osborne. You see the reports, you hear the accounts from your ministers, and Albert, with his keen, analytical mind, takes a profound interest in these developments, often discussing them with you late into the evening, the gas lamps casting a warm glow on maps unfurled across the table, diagrams of new inventions spread out for inspection. One of the most visible and dramatic symbols of this new age is the railway. While the first public steam railway, the Stockton and Darlington Railway, had opened in 1825 before your reign, the network exploded during your time on the throne, with over 6,000 miles of track laid by 1850 and much more to come. Ribbons of iron are stitching the country together, shrinking distances, making travel faster and more accessible than ever imagined. Your own first train journey in 1842 is a novel experience, a marvel of speed and engineering. Imagine the sensation the carriage, comfortably appointed yet still vibrating with the power of the locomotive, rushes through the countryside at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a generation earlier. Fields and villages blur past, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails a new national anthem of progress. Those first train journeys must have been an adventure, probably a bit bumpy, definitely sooty, and with a distinct chance your hat might fly off if you weren't careful. The original "Are we there yet?" experience, but with more coal smoke. Steamships, too, are revolutionizing travel and trade, their powerful engines defying wind and tide, connecting Britain more tightly to its burgeoning empire. And then there's the electric telegraph, its wires humming with messages transmitted almost instantaneously across vast distances, a true miracle of the age. You can now send and receive news, diplomatic instructions, even personal messages, with a speed that fundamentally alters the pace of governance and communication. Albert is particularly captivated by these technological advancements. He sees in them not just novelty, but the potential for human progress, for improvement in people's lives. He eagerly visits factories, inspects new machinery, and champions scientific research. Considerable academic debate persists over the degree to which the royal family's personal interest in technological advancement directly spurred innovation versus merely reflecting the prevailing spirit of the age. But there's no doubt Albert's enthusiasm was genuine and his patronage influential. He becomes a powerful advocate for science and industry, understanding their vital role in Britain's future prosperity and power. Yet, this shining coin of progress has a dark, grimy underside. The rapid industrialization and urbanization come at a terrible human cost. Millions flock from the countryside to the newly teeming cities in search of work, only to find themselves crammed into squalid, overcrowded slums where disease is rampant and life expectancy shockingly low. The conditions in many factories and mines are appalling. Men, women, and heartbreakingly, young children toil for incredibly long hours in dangerous, unhealthy environments for pitiful wages. You read the reports, the harrowing accounts from parliamentary commissions and social reformers, tales of children crawling through narrow mine shafts, of workers losing limbs in unguarded machinery, of families starving in wretched poverty. Britain was basically the tale of two cities on a national scale, one side inventing amazing things and sipping tea with their pinkies out, the other just trying not to get consumption. Awkward. These realities weigh heavily on your conscience, a stark contrast to the comfort and privilege of your own life. The scent of expensive perfumes and polished wood in your palaces cannot entirely mask the distant, imagined stench of poverty and pollution that clings to these new industrial centers. A wave of philanthropic and reformist sentiment begins to swell in response to these social ills. Figures like Lord Shaftesbury, a tireless campaigner for factory reform, bring the plight of the working classes to the attention of Parliament and the public. As a constitutional monarch, your direct power to legislate is limited, but your assent is required for bills to become law. You give your royal assent to a series of crucial factory acts and mines acts throughout your reign, laws that gradually, painstakingly, begin to regulate working hours, improve safety conditions, and restrict child labor. You follow these debates closely, discussing them with Albert and your ministers. Your personal sympathy for the suffering of your people is evident in your journal entries and letters, a quiet compassion that fuels your support for these humane measures. Albert, ever practical, goes beyond mere sympathy. He takes a keen interest in projects aimed at improving housing for the working classes, even designing model cottages for display, championing the idea that a healthy environment is essential for moral and physical well-being. The nation you reign over is a place of stark contrasts, a society being violently and vibrantly remade. Immense wealth is being generated, fortunes built on cotton, coal, and iron. A confident, ambitious middle class is rising, its members benefiting from new opportunities in industry, trade, and the professions. Grand new civic buildings, museums, and concert halls are being erected, symbols of this newfound prosperity and civic pride. Yet, alongside this opulence and optimism, there exists a depth of poverty and hardship that is equally unprecedented. The distant clang of construction from a new railway line might be a sound of progress to some, but to others, living in its shadow, it might simply mean more soot on their washing, or the loss of a familiar landmark. This atmosphere of change, of restless energy, of clashing realities, defines your age. It's an age of invention, but also of profound social upheaval, an age of incredible confidence, but also of deep-seated anxieties about the future, about the kind of society Britain is becoming. Even within the sanctuary of your palace, surrounded by tradition and protocol, you are not insulated from these seismic shifts. They arrive in the form of petitions, of deputations, of the very newspapers you read, their headlines proclaiming new triumphs of engineering or stark statistics of urban poverty. The quiet hum of this relentless progress, this age of steam and iron, becomes the ever-present soundtrack to your reign, a powerful, often unsettling, but ultimately defining force that shapes not only your nation, but your own understanding of what it means to be queen in a world transforming itself before your very eyes. The soft rain that once lulled you to sleep in Kensington is now often mingled with the imagined, distant rhythm of 1,000 steam hammers, forging a new and profoundly different Britain. While the engines of industry are reshaping Britain, forging wealth and progress for some, a different, far more terrible transformation is taking place across the Irish Sea, in a land also under your crown. A shadow begins to creep over Ireland in the mid-1840s, a creeping dread that will soon engulf the island in an unimaginable tragedy. The distant, rhythmic hum of machinery that underscores life in industrial England fades here, replaced by an anxious silence, the silence of fields that once promised sustenance now offering only decay. You are Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, and the news that begins to trickle, then flood, into your palace from your Irish domain is increasingly dire, painting a picture of suffering that chills you to the bone, even in the warmth of your lamplit rooms. Ireland, for much of its rural population, is a land balanced precariously on a single crop, the humble potato. For millions, it's not just a staple, but often the only food source, particularly for the tenant farmers and landless laborers who make up the vast majority. Their small plots of land, often rented at exorbitant rates, can produce enough potatoes to feed a family, but little else. It's a fragile existence, vulnerable to the whims of nature, a vulnerability that is about to be exposed with catastrophic consequences. The prevailing economic wisdom of the time often championed government that governs least, governs best, which, while a neat political phrase, probably wasn't much comfort when your entire potato crop had turned to an inedible, putrid mush. In 1845, a mysterious blight, a fungus called Phytophthora infestans, arrives, carried on the wind, unseen, insidious. It first appears as dark spots on the potato leaves, then rapidly spreads, turning the tubers themselves into a foul-smelling, black slime. The first year's failure is bad, causing widespread hardship. The second year, it is a disaster, and it continues, year after agonizing year. The fields, once green and promising, lie barren and blighted, the air heavy with the sickly sweet scent of rot. Hope withers alongside the crops, the reports reaching you in London, through official channels and increasingly desperate newspaper accounts, speak of a level of destitution that is hard to comprehend from the gilded comfort of Windsor or Buckingham Palace. Trying to grasp the sheer scale of it from palace reports, filled with stark figures and formal language, must have been like trying to understand a hurricane by looking at a weather vane. You see the direction of the ill wind, but can't fully feel the terrifying force of the devastation. The consequences are biblical in their scope: mass starvation, or Angorta Mor. The Great Hunger, as it becomes known in Irish, grips the land. People are reduced to eating weeds, nettles, even grass. Disease follows hunger like a ghoul typhus, relapsing fever, Dysentery, famine fevers sweep through the weakened population, turning villages into charnel houses. Landlords, many of them absentees living in Britain, continue to demand rent, and when tenants cannot pay, they are evicted, their meager cottages often torn down to prevent their return. Families are cast out onto the roadsides to die, with no shelter, no food, no hope. The nights in Ireland during these years must have been filled with an unimaginable terror, the gnawing emptiness of hunger, the cries of sick children, the profound silence of a landscape slowly being emptied of its people. The British government's response, first under Sir Robert Peel, and then, more significantly during the worst years, under Lord John Russell's Whig administration, is a source of intense and lasting controversy. Historical analysis continues to grapple with the complexities of the British government's response, particularly the balance between genuine attempts at relief and the prevailing economic doctrines of laissez-faire that arguably hampered more effective intervention. Peel initially takes some decisive action, controversially importing Indian corn dubbed Peel's brimstone by the Irish, who were unfamiliar with it and lacked mills to grind it properly, and repealing the Corn Laws in an effort to lower food prices. But Russell's government is more rigidly attached to the idea that market forces, not state intervention, should provide solutions. Relief efforts largely consist of public works projects, building roads that often led nowhere, or useless follies, where starving men, weakened by hunger, have to perform hard labor for a pittance, often not enough to feed their families. Soup kitchens are eventually established, offering some temporary relief, but they are too little, too late for too many. The infamous Poor Law Amendment Act makes landlords responsible for supporting their own tenants, which perversely incentivizes further evictions as landlords try to rid themselves of destitute populations. News of these policies and their horrific consequences travels at the speed of a steamship, which was fast for the time, but tragically slow when an entire nation was starving. There were no emergency text alerts, no 24-hour news channels to galvanize instant global action back then. You, as queen, are deeply distressed by the reports. Your journal entries from this period reflect your concern, your horror at the unfolding tragedy. In 1847, Queen Victoria personally donated $2,000 to the British Relief Association, a very significant sum for an individual at the time, equivalent to hundreds of thousands of pounds today. You also write letters urging your ministers to do more, expressing your sympathy for your suffering Irish subjects. Yet, as a constitutional monarch, your power to directly influence policy is limited. You can advise, you can encourage, you can warn, but you cannot command your government to act against its prevailing ideology. There's a terrible sense of helplessness that pervades your writings, the anguish of a sovereign witnessing such profound suffering within her own realm, yet constrained by the political realities of your role. The flickering lamplight in your study often illuminates your face, creased with worry. As you read the dispatches, the stark figures of mortality, the heartbreaking accounts of desperation. Perhaps a fierce storm rages outside the palace windows on some of those nights, its fury a dim echo of the tempest of human misery tearing through Ireland. The human cost is staggering. It's estimated that at least 1 million people die from starvation and disease. Another 1 million are forced to emigrate, fleeing the blighted land in overcrowded, disease-ridden coffin ships, seeking a new life in America, Canada, or Australia. The Irish diaspora spreads across the globe, carrying with it a deep-seated bitterness towards British rule, which many hold responsible for the extent of the catastrophe. Ireland's population is decimated, its social fabric torn apart. Entire villages disappear. The land falling silent, haunted by the ghosts of those who perished or fled. The Great Famine casts a long, dark shadow over your reign, permanently altering Anglo-Irish relations. It fuels the flames of Irish nationalism, hardening the resolve of those who seek independence from British rule. For you, it is a profound personal and political tragedy. How do you reconcile the immense power and prosperity of Britain, the heart of a global empire, with this apocalyptic failure in a part of your own United Kingdom, the glittering celebrations, the industrial triumphs, the domestic joys of your own life? All must have seemed hollow at times, set against the backdrop of such immense and proximate suffering. The soft rustle of your silk gowns, the clink of fine china at state dinners, the cheerful laughter of your children in the palace gardens. These everyday sounds of your world must have been jarringly dissonant with the imagined silence of Irish roads lined with the unburied dead. The grief of Ireland becomes a heavy, unseen weight in the rooms of your palaces, a sorrow that the passage of time, and even the eventual subsiding of the blight, cannot easily erase from the collective memory of a people, or from the annals of your long and complex reign. Even as the long, sorrowful shadow of the Irish famine begins to recede, though its imprint on memory and history remains indelible, another vast, complex narrative is unfolding, one that will come to define your era perhaps more than any other, the unprecedented expansion of the British Empire, the quiet hum of industry in Britain, the clatter of looms and the roar of furnaces, is matched by the creak of rigging on countless ships, the thud of colonial administrators' stamps on official documents, and the steady march of soldiers and explorers across distant continents. From your vantage point in the lamplit studies of Windsor or Buckingham Palace, the world map is increasingly painted red, a visual testament to Britain's ever-extending reach. It was often said, with a mixture of pride and perhaps a touch of awe, that the sun never set on your empire. It was less a romantic boast and more a logistical nightmare for scheduling meetings across time zones, if they'd had Zoom back then. Anyway, night after night, you pore over dispatches, reports, and letters that arrive by steamship and increasingly via the rapid clicks of the telegraph from the farthest corners of the globe. These documents bring with them the scent of exotic spices from the bustling markets of Calcutta, the imagined sight of vast, sun-drenched plains in Australia, the rustle of wind through the immense forests of Canada, and the low, thrilling hum of life from the African interior, still largely a mystery to Europeans. By the end of the 19th century, the British Empire would cover about a quarter of the world's land area and govern nearly a quarter of its population, an entity of staggering scale and diversity, all acknowledging you as their queen. The responsibility of it, the sheer imaginative leap required to picture these myriad lands and peoples, must feel immense as you sit there. The only sounds the crackle of the fire and the soft scratch of your pen. The motivations behind this relentless expansion are a complex tapestry woven from threads of commerce, strategy, and a particular Victorian brand of conviction. Scholarly inquiry continues to explore the multifaceted and often contradictory motivations behind imperial expansion, weighing economic drivers like the insatiable hunger for raw materials and new markets against political ambitions for global dominance and the perceived cultural duties of a leading Christian nation. There's the pragmatic desire for secure trade routes, for coaling stations for your growing steam-powered navy, for access to everything from cotton and tea to diamonds and gold. But alongside this runs a powerful current of missionary zeal, a genuine, if often misguided, belief in a civilizing mission, the idea that Britain had a duty to spread its laws, its religion, and its way of life to what were considered lesser peoples. A lot of civilizing back then seemed to involve drawing lines on maps that nobody who actually lived there had asked for, and enthusiastically encouraging everyone to adopt British customs, whether it suited the local climate or not. India, often called the jewel in the crown, is central to this imperial edifice. Though you are not yet formally Empress of India, that title will come later, the vast subcontinent is increasingly under British sway, largely administered in these middle years of your reign by the powerful East India Company, a private enterprise that effectively rules over millions. The richness and complexity of Indian cultures, the ancient civilizations, the sheer diversity of its peoples, are a source of constant fascination for you. You avidly read accounts, look at sketches and early photographs, and dream of its vibrant colors and intricate temples, all while the company's policies reshape its economy and society to serve British interests. Then there are the great settler colonies Canada, a vast northern land of forests, prairies, and increasingly thriving cities, moving steadily towards greater self-governance under your crown. Australia, once a penal colony, is transforming into a land of opportunity, its burgeoning sheep farms providing wool for Britain's textile mills, its newly discovered gold fields luring adventurers from across the globe, the immense distances involved, the pioneering spirit required to carve out a life in these often harsh environments, fill you with a sense of admiration for your subjects there. New Zealand, with its stunning landscapes and the proud Maori people, is another jewel being added to your imperial crown, not without conflict and complex treaty negotiations. Africa, for much of the early and mid-Victorian period, remains largely the dark continent in the European imagination, its interior little known. But explorers, often driven by a potent mix of scientific curiosity, anti-slavery convictions, and missionary fervor, are beginning to penetrate its depths. Figures like David Livingstone become national heroes, their expeditions, fraught with danger and disease, capturing the public imagination. Their reports speak of incredible wildlife, mighty rivers, and diverse African kingdoms, slowly filling in the blank spaces on your maps. The scramble for Africa, that intense period of European colonization, will reach its peak later in your reign. But the groundwork, the initial contacts and claims, are being laid now. Britain was basically collecting countries and territories like they were highly sought-after collectibles, aiming for the full set. Oh, is that a strategically placed port or a resource-rich valley? We'll take it seemed to be the unspoken motto of the more ardent imperialists. Administering this sprawling global enterprise is a monumental task. The Colonial Office in London grows in size and complexity, its officials grappling with issues ranging from border disputes in remote African territories to constitutional developments in Canada. Governors, appointed by you on the advice of your ministers, are sent out to represent the Crown, wielding immense power in their respective territories. The arrival of the mail ships, their bags stuffed with official dispatches in leather pouches, is a vital link. a tangible connection between the heart of the empire and its distant limbs. The quiet clicking of the telegraph machines in their dedicated offices becomes a constant, subtle sound in London, a reminder of messages flashing back and forth across continents and under oceans, shrinking the world, yet also highlighting the immense challenge of governing such disparate lands from afar. You take a keen personal interest in your empire. You meet with colonial governors on their return to Britain, with visiting tribal chiefs or dignitaries from distant lands, their colorful robes and unfamiliar languages adding a touch of the exotic to the formal atmosphere of your palaces. You learn a few words of Hindustani to better converse with your Indian servants, a small gesture that nonetheless speaks to your desire to connect with all your subjects. There's a genuine sense of maternal duty, a feeling that all these diverse peoples, of all colors and creeds, are under your care, your protection. This pride in the empire, this belief in its benign purpose, however questionable that seems through a modern lens, is a sentiment widely shared by many of your British subjects, fueling a potent sense of national identity and destiny. The empire, in turn, profoundly shapes Britain. Wealth flows into London from colonial trade and investments. Exotic goods, tea, sugar, rubber, spices become staples of British life. Museums are filled with artifacts brought back from distant lands. Young men find careers and adventure in the colonial service or the army. Their letters home, painting pictures of life on the frontiers of empire. The docks of London, Liverpool, and Bristol are bustling hives of activity, ships arriving and departing in a constant stream, their holds filled with the produce of your global dominions, their masts a forest against the smoky city sky. Even the quiet residential streets of London, with their gas lamps casting a gentle glow on the cobbled pathways, are home to families whose fortunes and whose sons are tied to these far-flung territories. The empire is not just an abstract concept on a map. It's a living, breathing part of British life, its influence felt in every cup of tea, every debate in Parliament, every headline in the newspapers you read before drifting off to sleep. The vast, sprawling canvas of your empire, with its myriad peoples and diverse landscapes, is largely a story of expansion and administration. But the peace within its core and on its peripheries is not always guaranteed. The mid-1850s see Britain, and you as its sovereign, drawn into a significant and costly conflict far from the shores of England, the Crimean War, the distant echo of cannon fire, the anxious wait for news from the front, and the somber reality of casualty lists begin to cast a different kind of shadow over your reign, a shadow of conflict that tests the nation's resolve and your own spirit. The soft glow of the lamps in your private study at Buckingham Palace often illuminates maps not of distant colonies this time, but of the Black Sea region, as you and Albert anxiously follow the movements of your troops. The roots of the Crimean War are tangled and deep, embedded in what diplomats call the Eastern Question. Essentially, what should happen to the declining Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe, and how to manage the ambitions of other great powers, particularly Russia, in the region. It was the 19th century's most complicated geopolitical drama, like a really high-stakes soap opera, but with more empires, fewer commercial breaks, and significantly more bears, the Russian kind. That is, Russia seeks to expand its influence. Britain and France are determined to prevent this, fearing a disruption to the balance of power and a threat to their own interests in the Mediterranean and beyond. A dispute over the protection of Christian holy sites in Palestine provides the spark, And soon, diplomacy fails, and war is declared in 1853, with Britain and France allied with the Ottoman Empire against Russia. There's an initial wave of patriotic fervor across Britain. Crowds cheer as smartly uniformed troops march through the streets on their way to the ports, bound for the distant Crimea. Patriotic songs fill the music halls, and there's a confident expectation of a swift victory. You review your guards, their scarlet tunics brilliant in the sunlight, a lump in your throat as you wish them Godspeed. But the realities of war, especially one fought so far from home with the logistical capabilities of the mid-19th century, soon begin to bite. Apparently, remembering to pack enough warm socks, adequate food supplies, and sufficient bandages wasn't always top of the invading another country and laying siege to a major fortress checklist back then. An unfortunate oversight, to say the least, and one with brutal consequences. The campaign in the Crimea is arduous and bloody. There are hard-won victories, like the Battle of Alma, but they come at a heavy cost. The main effort becomes the lengthy siege of Sevastopol, Russia's major naval base on the Black Sea. Conditions for your soldiers are appalling. They face not only a determined enemy, but also the ravages of a brutal Crimean winter, for which they are ill-equipped. Cholera, dysentery, and other diseases sweep through the encampments, claiming far more lives than enemy action. The suffering is immense. Stories begin to filter back, not just through official dispatches, but through a new and powerful medium, the war correspondent. Men like William Howard Russell of the Times send vivid, often shocking, reports directly from the front lines. Suddenly, the public isn't just getting the sanitized official version of events. They are reading about the courage of the ordinary soldier, but also about the incompetence of some of the commanders and the horrific conditions in the field hospitals. It was like the invention of the unfiltered war selfie, but with more ink, less duck face, and a much greater chance of typhus. The extent to which public opinion, inflamed by these newspaper reports, directly influenced military and political decision-making during the Crimean War is a subject of continuing historical examination. But there's no doubt it brought the grim realities of war home in an unprecedented way. The desperate state of the medical services, or lack thereof, becomes a national scandal. Wounded and sick soldiers are dying in droves from infection and neglect. It is in this dire context that Florence Nightingale arrives at the barrack hospital in Scutari, across the Bosphorus from Constantinople. With a small team of volunteer nurses, she brings order, sanitation, and dedicated care to the overwhelmed and filthy hospital. Her tireless work, her compassion, her famous nightly rounds with a lamp, the lady with the lamp, become legendary. You are deeply impressed by her efforts and become a staunch supporter of her work, corresponding with her and later meeting her, recognizing the profound importance of her reforms not just for the Crimea, but for the future of nursing and hospital care. The gentle glow of Nightingale's lamp in those horrific wards seems to pierce the darkness of suffering, a beacon of hope and humanity. Your own concern for your troops is profound and deeply personal. You follow the news from the front with intense anxiety, your heart aching for the hardships they endure. You knit comforts for them, scarves, mittens, simple, heartfelt gestures from their queen. More significantly, you break with royal tradition by frequently visiting wounded soldiers who have been brought back to hospitals in Britain. You walk through the wards, stopping to speak to the men, offering words of comfort and encouragement, your presence a powerful morale booster. These encounters are deeply moving for you, bringing the human cost of the war into sharp focus. You see the shattered limbs, the feverish eyes, the quiet courage of men who have faced unimaginable horrors. One of the most enduring legacies of your personal involvement in the war is the creation of a new medal for valor. You feel strongly that acts of exceptional bravery, regardless of an officer's rank or a soldier's social standing, should be recognized. And so, in 1856, Queen Victoria instituted the Victoria Cross to be awarded for valor in the face of the enemy. The simple bronze cross, bearing the legend "For Valor," becomes the highest military decoration for bravery in the British Armed Forces. You personally present the first medals to heroes of the Crimean War in a ceremony in Hyde Park, pinning them onto the chests of these brave men, a deeply symbolic act that underscores your connection to your armed forces and your admiration for their courage. The distant sound of military bands playing on that day is a poignant counterpoint to the silence of the graves left behind in the cold Crimean earth. The war finally grinds to a halt in 1856 with the Treaty of Paris. Sevastopol has fallen, and Russia accepts terms that limit its naval power in the Black Sea. Britain and its allies can claim victory, but it's a victory achieved at a terrible price in lives and resources. There is relief, certainly, but also a sober reckoning. The war has exposed serious weaknesses in the British Army's organization, leadership, and supply systems. The public, once so enthusiastic, is now more aware of the brutal realities of modern warfare. The Crimean War becomes a catalyst for significant military and medical reforms in the years that follow. As the last echoes of the conflict fade, and the ships bring your soldiers home, those who survived, you are left to reflect on the sacrifices made. The names of battles like Balaclava, with its tragically heroic charge of the Light Brigade, and Inkerman, the Soldiers' Battle, are etched into the national memory. The quiet nights return to your palaces, no longer punctuated by the urgent arrival of war dispatches, but the experience of the Crimean winter, the distant suffering, and the quiet courage of your soldiers will remain with you. A solemn reminder of the responsibilities and the sorrows that come with the crown, even as the gentle sounds of a London evening, a distant carriage, a striking clock, once again become the primary soundtrack to your nocturnal reflections. The shadows of the Crimean War, with its attendant anxieties and sorrows, eventually begin to lengthen and fade into the past. Yet the memory of its sacrifices remains a solemn undertone to your reign. But tonight, let's draw the heavy velvet curtains on those somber scenes for a while, and allow the flickering lamplight to illuminate an earlier, exceptionally bright chapter. A moment of dazzling innovation and international spectacle that showcased not the grim necessities of conflict, but the boundless potential of human ingenuity and peaceful enterprise. This is the story of the Great Exhibition of 1851, a monumental achievement that stands as a testament to the vision and tireless efforts of your beloved Albert. He wasn't just a prince consort, content to remain in the background. Albert was like a Victorian-era project manager extraordinaire, probably with meticulously drawn plans and schedules that would make a modern efficiency expert weep with joy. Albert, as you know so intimately, possesses a keen intellect, a restless energy, and a profound desire to contribute meaningfully to the adopted country he has come to love. He is a passionate advocate for science, for art, for education, and for the application of industrial innovation to improve the lives of ordinary people. He sees the incredible dynamism of British industry, the steam-powered factories, the ingenious new machines, and he conceives of a grand project, an exhibition that would bring together the works of industry of all nations under one roof. His vision is not merely for a trade fair, but for a festival of peace and progress, a place where countries could compete not on the battlefield, but in the workshops and studios, sharing their achievements and fostering mutual understanding. The quiet evenings spent in your shared study, the lamplight falling on his earnest face as he outlines his ambitious plans, are filled with his infectious enthusiasm. The path to realizing this crystal dream, however, is far from smooth. There is skepticism in Parliament, resistance from those who fear an influx of foreign undesirables, and dire predictions of chaos and even revolution. The press, initially, is often critical, with some nicknaming the proposed building the Glass Monster. Many doubt such an enormous and unprecedented undertaking could ever succeed. But Albert, with his characteristic tenacity and meticulous attention to detail, presses on, chairing endless committees, soothing anxieties, and driving the project forward with unwavering determination. He finds an inspired partner in Joseph Paxton, a brilliant gardener and engineer, who comes up with a revolutionary design for the exhibition hall, a vast structure of prefabricated iron and glass, capable of being erected with astonishing speed in Hyde Park. It would be, quite literally, a palace made of crystal. It was basically the world's biggest, fanciest greenhouse. But instead of prize-winning tomatoes or exotic orchids, it was stuffed with the wonders of global industry and art. And way fewer bees, hopefully. The race to build the Crystal Palace is a spectacle in itself, a marvel of Victorian engineering and organization. Thousands of identical panes of glass, miles of iron girders, all assembled with precision and speed. And then, on the 1st of May, 1851, the glorious day of the grand opening arrives. The sun, as if by royal command, shines brilliantly, making the vast glass structure glitter and sparkle like a diamond. You drive in state to Hyde Park, the streets thronged with cheering crowds, the air electric with anticipation. As you enter the Crystal Palace with Albert by your side and your elder children, Vicky and Bertie, a wave of overwhelming emotion washes over you. Tears fill your eyes. The sheer scale of the building, the light flooding in from every direction, the sight of the flags of all nations hanging harmoniously together, the roar of the assembled thousands. It is, as you later write in your journal, one of the greatest and most glorious days of your life. Your pride in Albert, seeing his vision so magnificently realized, is immeasurable. Inside, the Crystal Palace is a wonderland. It stretches for over 1/3 of a mile, enclosing fully grown elm trees that had been preserved on the site. Sunlight streams down, illuminating an astonishing array of exhibits from across Britain, its sprawling empire, and nations from America to Zollverein, Germany, from France to far-off China. There are mighty steam engines, hissing and turning with polished precision, intricate looms weaving complex patterns, gleaming agricultural machinery promising bounteous harvests. You could probably find almost anything in there, from a colossal block of coal weighing many tons to the most delicate lace, from awe-inspiring statues to the latest in photographic equipment. Innovation was wild, and it was all on display. The murmur of the crowd, a constant, low hum, is punctuated by the whir of machinery, the strains of music from organs and military bands, and exclamations of wonder in a dozen different languages. The air itself seems to vibrate with excitement, tinged with the faint scent of machine oil, new paint, exotic perfumes from international stalls, and the collective breath of thousands of awestruck visitors. The public response is phenomenal. The Great Exhibition of 1851 attracted over 6 million visitors during the roughly 6 months it was open, a staggering number for the time. People flock from all corners of Britain, and indeed the world, many of them traveling by the new railways that Albert himself championed. It is a truly democratic event, with special days for cheaper entry, allowing working-class families to experience its wonders alongside the wealthy and aristocratic. You yourself visit again and again, sometimes formally, sometimes almost incognito with Albert, delighting in the crowds, the exhibits, and above all, in witnessing Albert's quiet satisfaction and the universal acclaim for his achievement. Historical perspectives vary on whether the Great Exhibition truly fostered lasting international goodwill or primarily served to reinforce Britain's sense of industrial and imperial preeminence. But for those 6 months, it certainly felt like a bright beacon of hope and shared human endeavor. The legacy of the Great Exhibition extends far beyond its 6-month run. It is a resounding financial success, and the considerable profits are, under Albert's guidance, wisely invested in purchasing land in South Kensington. This area is then developed into a unique cultural and educational quarter, affectionately nicknamed Albertopolis, which will eventually house a cluster of world-renowned museums, the Victoria and Albert Museum named in your and his honor, the Science Museum, the Natural History Museum, as well as colleges and learned societies. The exhibition also gives a tremendous impetus to design reform and technical education in Britain, inspiring new standards of manufacturing and artistry. For Albert, the Great Exhibition is the triumphant culmination of years of patient work, a testament to his belief in progress, education, and the power of peaceful exchange. It is his gift to his adopted nation, and a profound expression of his love for you, his queen, who supported him steadfastly through all the challenges. As you look back on that shining summer of 1851, even from the vantage point of later, sometimes darker, years, the memory of the Crystal Palace, shimmering in the Hyde Park sunlight, remains a source of immense joy and pride. It's a radiant vision that cuts through the often somber duties of monarchy, a reminder of what can be achieved when innovation, determination, and a belief in a shared future come together. The distant, imagined gleam of that glass palace, filled with light and the dreams of a hopeful age, is a comforting presence as the city outside your window settles into the quiet of another night. The brilliant, joyous light of the Great Exhibition, that dazzling testament to Albert's vision and your shared happiness, still casts a warm glow in your memory, a cherished beacon from a time when your world felt complete, when your beloved husband was vibrantly alive, his mind teeming with projects for the betterment of his adopted nation and the world. The rhythm of your life, punctuated by the arrival of your children, the steady duties of state, and the quiet companionship you and Albert shared in your lamplit evenings, seemed settled, enduring. But even the brightest days must eventually yield to twilight, and a profound, life-altering shadow was gathering, preparing to fall not just upon you, but upon the entire nation. Albert, your constant support, your intellectual partner, your dearest love, worked tirelessly, often to the point of exhaustion, His dedication to his duties, whether it was reforming the administration of the royal household, championing scientific and artistic endeavors, or advising you on complex matters of state, was absolute. He poured his energy into every task, his meticulous nature driving him to perfection. The stress of international crises, like the Trent Affair in late 1861, where his calm diplomatic intervention helped avert a potentially disastrous war with the United States, took a significant toll on his already strained constitution. You noticed the growing weariness in his eyes, the way he sometimes pressed a hand to his forehead as if to ward off a persistent ache, even as he assured you he was fine. The damp, chilly air of Windsor in the late autumn of that year seemed to cling to him, a harbinger of the illness that was to come. What began as a common cold, or so it seemed, soon worsened. Doctors diagnosed it as influenza, then, with increasing alarm, as typhoid fever, a dread disease in an era before antibiotics. Prince Albert died on December 14th, 1861, at the tragically young age of 42. That date is seared into your soul, a day when the vibrant tapestry of your life was ripped asunder, the colors fading to an unbearable monochrome gray. You are with him in his final moments in the Blue Room at Windsor Castle, holding his hand, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the walls, shadows that seem to mimic the encroaching darkness in your own heart. When his breathing ceases and the terrible, irrevocable silence descends, your world simply stops. The clocks may continue to tick in the palace. The city outside may continue its nocturnal hum. But for you, time itself fractures. The grief that engulfs you is absolute, a tsunami of sorrow that sweeps away everything in its path. It is a physical pain, an ache in your very bones, a hollowness that you know will never truly be filled. The funeral arrangements, the formal expressions of condolence from across the world, the black-edged stationery that becomes a symbol of your bereavement, it all passes in a blur of unspeakable anguish. You retreat from public view, from the curious, pitying gaze of the world, seeking solace, or perhaps just a place to endure your suffering, within the walls of Osborne or Balmoral, places so intimately associated with Albert's presence, his love, his life. Every room, every path, every view is saturated with his memory. The scent of his pipe tobacco seems to linger in his study. His books sit on the shelves as if he just stepped away for a moment. The silence is deafening, broken only by your own weeping, the soft rustle of your black mourning gowns, and the hushed, mournful cadence of the wind outside, perhaps carrying the scent of rain, like tears from the heavens themselves. You become the widow of Windsor, a figure defined by your loss. The widow's cap becomes your constant attire, a visible symbol of your enduring grief. You meticulously preserve Albert's rooms as he left them, fresh water and clothes laid out daily, as if he might return at any moment. This prolonged, intense mourning becomes a defining characteristic of your reign. She basically wrote the manual on how to mourn like you really mean it, and then lived by its every somber chapter for about 4 decades. Dedication of a very particular, sorrowful kind. This was an age that understood and even ritualized mourning to a degree that seems almost alien to modern sensibilities. But even by Victorian standards, your grief is monumental, all-consuming. Your primary focus becomes the commemoration of Albert, the immortalization of his memory. If there was a spare patch of land, or a prominent spot for a statue. Albert was getting a memorial. It was a sort of never forget campaign on an imperial and deeply personal scale. The most famous of these is the magnificent Albert Memorial in Kensington Gardens, opposite the site of his greatest triumph, the Crystal Palace and the Royal Albert Hall, a grand concert hall dedicated to his name. But there are countless other statues, institutes, and buildings named in his honor across Britain and the Empire. You oversee these projects with meticulous care, ensuring every detail reflects his character and his contributions. It is your way of keeping him alive, of ensuring the world never forgets the man you loved so profoundly. Your withdrawal from public life is near total for many years. You perform your constitutional duties, reading state papers, signing documents, meeting with ministers when absolutely necessary. But you shun ceremonies, public appearances, and the vibrant social life of the court. This prolonged seclusion has consequences. The popularity of the monarchy wanes in some quarters. Republican sentiment, though never a mainstream threat, gains a little traction. Your ministers, men like Gladstone and Disraeli, struggle to engage you, to draw you back into the full stream of national life. Your own children, now growing into adulthood, must navigate their own grief while also contending with yours, a heavy burden for them to bear. The precise psychological impact of Albert's death on Victoria's subsequent political judgment remains a nuanced subject of scholarly debate among historians. Did her sorrow cloud her perception, or did it, in some ways, forge a new kind of steely resolve, albeit one deeply tinged with melancholy, in the desolate landscape of your grief? A few individuals managed to pierce through the fog. One of the most notable, and later controversial, is John Brown, your Highland gillie from Balmoral. He is a plain-spoken, loyal servant, utterly without pretense. He treats you not just as a queen, but as a woman suffering immense loss, offering gruff comfort and practical support. He was the ultimate no-nonsense Highland gillie, probably the only person who could tell the queen her hat was on crooked, or that she needed to get out for some fresh air, and actually get away with it. A breath of fresh, if rather blunt, Highland air. His uncomplicated presence provides a lifeline of sorts, a connection to the robust simplicity of Albert's beloved Scottish estate, very slowly, reluctantly, often prodded by your family and advisors who stress the importance of the monarch being seen. You begin to undertake a few more public duties, but the joy has gone out of them. The world seems a duller, colder place without Albert by your side. The black veil, literal and metaphorical, remains, even as the decades pass. His death is a wound that never fully heals. The lamplit evenings are no longer for shared work and quiet conversation, but for solitary remembrance, for poring over his letters, for gazing at his portraits, for reliving precious memories that are now both a comfort and a source of enduring pain. The soft patter of rain against the window panes, once a soothing sound, now often seems to echo the tears you continue to shed for the love of your life. The prince whose vision and companionship had illuminated the very heart of your reign, and whose absence would define so much of its remainder. The deep, pervasive sorrow of Albert's absence continues to cast its long shadow over your days and nights, a constant threnody beneath the surface of your existence. Yet, even within the secluded sphere of your mourning, the vast machinery of your empire grinds on, its demands and developments unceasing. The distant lands under your crown continue to evolve, presenting new challenges and opportunities. And one jewel in particular, the vast, complex subcontinent of India, begins to figure even more prominently in your royal identity. The soft lamplight in your study at Osborne often falls upon maps of this distant territory. Its vibrant colors and intricate coastlines a world away from the gray English skies outside your window. You remember the shock and horror of the Indian Mutiny or the Sepoy Rebellion. Back in 1857, a bloody and traumatic upheaval that led to the end of the East India Company's long rule. In 1858, India came directly under the authority of the Crown, and your proclamation at that time promised respect for the rights, dignities, and customs of the Indian princes and people, a pledge you hold dear. Since then, your connection to India, though geographically distant, has deepened in significance, both politically and personally. The scent of sandalwood from a beautifully carved box, a gift from a visiting Maharaja, might occasionally perfume the air of your chambers, a tangible link to that exotic realm. It is your shrewd and imaginative Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, who conceives of a way to formalize and elevate this connection. Disraeli, with his flamboyant personality and his artful way with words, understands your deep sense of monarchical duty and your fascination with the romantic grandeur of empire. He knows how to charm you, probably suggesting that the title Empress possessed a certain je ne sais quoi, a majestic resonance that Queen alone just couldn't quite capture when it came to ruling over so many diverse peoples, ancient principalities, and yes, probably a good number of elephants and elaborately turbaned potentates. He believes that bestowing upon you the title Empress of India would not only reflect the true stature of British dominion there, but also bind the Indian princes and people more closely to your throne, serving as a powerful symbol against the encroaching influence of other powers, like Russia, in Central Asia. You are captivated by the idea. India, with its ancient history, its dazzling array of cultures, its powerful princes, and its sheer exoticism, holds a particular allure for your imagination. You see the title not as an empty vanity, but as a genuine expression of your affection and responsibility towards your Indian subjects. Thus, after some spirited debate in Parliament, for not everyone is immediately convinced of its necessity or appropriateness, the Royal Titles Act is passed in 1876, and you officially become Victoria, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, Queen, Defender of the Faith, Empress of India, Kaiser-i-Hind. The words have a grand, almost mystical ring to them. Though you yourself do not travel to India to receive this new title, the journey would be far too arduous and prolonged. A magnificent imperial assemblage, or Durbar, is held in Delhi on January 1st, 1877, to proclaim your new dignity. Lord Lytton, your viceroy, presides over a spectacle of unparalleled imperial grandeur. Imagine the scene, described to you in voluminous, detailed dispatches that you pore over. Late into the night, a vast amphitheater erected on the plains outside Delhi, shimmering in the Indian sun. 63 ruling Indian princes, resplendent in silks, jewels, and elaborate turbans, arrive on elephants and horses, accompanied by their retainers and private armies, British officials in their formal uniforms, thousands of troops on parade, the unfurling of countless banners, the sound of trumpets and gun salutes echoing across the land. It was the ultimate imperial rebranding event, new title, a very big party, lots of jewels, and a spectacular display of power, like a royal product launch on an epic scale, but with more tigers and ornate weaponry, hopefully the former kept at a very safe and respectful distance from the assembled dignitaries. Interpretations among scholars diverge regarding the primary motivations behind the adoption of the Empress of India title, whether it was primarily a strategic geopolitical move designed by Disraeli to assert British dominance, a genuine, if paternalistic, attempt to foster loyalty among the Indian elites, or largely a symbolic gesture of imperial pride that resonated deeply with your own monarchical sensibilities. For many of the Indian princes, the title and the accompanying durbar are seen as an affirmation of their own status within the imperial hierarchy, a direct link to you, their distant but powerful sovereign. For others, both in India and among critics in Britain, it is viewed as another layer of imperial subjugation, a formal assertion of foreign rule. The reality, as with so many aspects of empire, is likely a complex mixture of all these things. Your personal engagement with India certainly deepens following the assumption of this new title. You take great pleasure in your correspondence with Indian princes, delighting in the ornate calligraphy and deferential language of their letters. You commission portraits of Indian notables and scenes of Indian life. Later in your reign, your household will include Indian servants, most famously Abdul Karim, your munshi, from whom you eagerly attempt to learn Hindustani. Imagine, after a long day wrestling with complex European diplomacy or domestic political squabbles, sitting down to practice your Urdu script or memorize new vocabulary. Right. After I've sorted out this rather tiresome issue in the Balkans, it's straight back to my verb conjugations and the correct pronunciation of shukriya. Multitasking on a truly royal and rather studious scale. These efforts, however imperfect, reflect a genuine desire to connect with this most significant part of your empire. India truly is the jewel in the crown, a source of immense wealth, manpower, and prestige for Britain. Its vast army secures imperial interests across Asia and Africa. Its raw materials fuel British industries, and its markets absorb British manufactured goods. For you, it also represents something more personal, a realm of romance and ancient grandeur that offers an imaginative escape, perhaps even a glimmer of color in the otherwise somber palette of your prolonged widowhood. Disraeli, with his florid descriptions and his understanding of your temperament, certainly helps to cultivate this vision of India as a land of loyal princes and grateful subjects, a vision you embrace with enthusiasm. The title of Empress of India solidifies your image as the matriarch of a global empire, a figure of immense, almost mythical, authority. It adds another layer to your already complex identity, a testament to the era of unparalleled British power over which you preside. As the night deepens outside your windows, and the sounds of London or Windsor fade into a gentle hush, your thoughts might drift eastward, across seas and continents, to that vibrant, complex land where you rule as Empress. The scent of English roses in your garden might, for a moment, seem to mingle with the imagined fragrance of jasmine and spices from a Delhi bazaar, a sensory reminder of the vast and varied domains that look to you as their sovereign, their queen, their empress. Your new title, Empress of India, adds another lustrous, if distant, facet to your imperial crown, a symbol of Britain's vast global reach. Yet, the governance of this sprawling empire, and indeed of the United Kingdom itself, rests not on grand titles alone, but on the day-to-day mechanics of politics and crucially, on your relationship with the powerful men who serve as your prime ministers. After Albert's guiding hand was so cruelly snatched away, your interactions with these statesmen, the leaders of your government, take on a new significance, a fresh set of challenges for you to navigate in your long and often solitary widowhood. The flickering lamplight in your Osborne study often illuminates not just maps of far-flung territories, but also the stern or smiling portraits of these men, each of whom leaves an indelible mark on your reign and on your own personal history. As a constitutional monarch, you reign, but do not rule directly. Your government, headed by the Prime Minister, commands a majority in the House of Commons and is responsible for policy and administration. Yet, your role is far from passive. You have the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. And in an age when personal relationships still counted for a great deal in politics, your favor or disfavor towards your first minister could significantly affect the atmosphere of governance, even if it didn't always change the ultimate policy direction. Assessing the true constitutional impact of Victoria's personal preferences for her prime ministers is complex, with ongoing scholarly discussion about whether her favor or disfavor significantly altered policy outcomes or merely affected the tone and interpersonal dynamics of governance. Two towering figures dominate the political landscape of your later reign, men whose personalities and political philosophies are as different as night and day, Benjamin Disraeli and William Ewart Gladstone. Your relationships with them become the stuff of legend, defining much of the political narrative of the era. Disraeli, your Dizzy, is a master of flattery, a novelist by trade before he became a statesman, and he possesses an almost uncanny understanding of your character, your romanticism, your deep attachment to Albert's memory, and your imperial pride. Disraeli could lay on the charm thicker than a 7-layer cake, and you, frankly, found it a welcome change from more austere approaches. Who wouldn't enjoy being told their insights were invaluable and their imperial vision magnificent, especially after a long day of sifting through tedious state papers? He approaches you not just as his queen, but as a woman, offering sympathy, cultivating your interests, and sharing your dreams of imperial grandeur. It is he who masterminds the purchase of shares in the Suez Canal, a strategic coup for the empire, and he who orchestrates your elevation to Empress of India. Gestures that resonate deeply with your sense of Britain's destiny and your own sovereign role. Your correspondence with him is warm, almost affectionate, and his audiences with you, often in the cozy, lamplit intimacy of your private rooms, are frequently leavened with wit and a shared sense of purpose. He even remembered your fondness for primroses, Albert's favorite flower, a small but deeply appreciated touch. Then there is Gladstone. If Disraeli is all velvet and subtle persuasion, Gladstone is granite and righteous conviction. He is a man of immense intellect, profound religious faith, and formidable energy, a true reforming giant of the 19th century. Yet, your personal antipathy towards him is almost legendary. You find him cold, overbearing, and utterly lacking in the graces that make Disraeli such congenial company. Queen Victoria famously said of William Gladstone, "He speaks to me as if I were a public meeting," a pithy summary of his didactic lecturing style that you find intensely irritating. Gladstone's idea of a quiet chat with the Queen probably involved a detailed exposition of his latest budget, a stern lecture on the moral imperative of some obscure piece of legislation, and perhaps a reminder of your constitutional duties, all delivered with the booming gravitas he usually reserved for the House of Commons, not exactly relaxing tea-time conversation. Was it? Their political differences only exacerbate the personal clash. Gladstone's reforming zeal often leads him down paths you find unsettling. His support for Irish Home Rule, for instance, is something you view with deep suspicion and alarm. His desire for further parliamentary reform, his sometimes critical view of imperial expansion, all run counter to your more conservative instincts, particularly in your later years. Working with him is a constant trial. You dread his audiences, his long, earnest explanations, his apparent inability to grasp your perspective or offer the kind of personal consideration that Disraeli provides so effortlessly. It was like having to work closely with that one supremely capable but utterly exasperating colleague whose every brilliant idea you just know is going to result in more work and considerable discomfort for you. But you're the queen, so you can't just feign a sudden illness or hide in the royal linen cupboard until he leaves. The red dispatch boxes containing his submissions are often approached with a sigh, the prospect of his presence casting a pall over your day. Of course, there are other prime ministers. Lord Palmerston, in the earlier part of your reign and Albert's lifetime, was a bombastic, assertive figure with whom you often clashed over foreign policy, though you came to respect his abilities. Later, Lord Salisbury, a conservative like Disraeli, provides a more reassuring, aristocratic presence, his views more aligned with your own, making for a smoother, if less emotionally charged, relationship than your intense bond with Disraeli or your profound dislike of Gladstone. These strong personal preferences inevitably create tensions. You are meant to be an impartial sovereign above the fray of party politics, yet your very human reactions to these powerful personalities cannot be entirely suppressed. Your clear preference for Disraeli and the Conservatives over Gladstone and the Liberals is no secret, and it sometimes makes for awkward constitutional moments. The challenge is to feel so strongly, yet to act with the requisite neutrality, a balancing act that requires immense self-control, especially without Albert's steadying counsel to guide you through the political thickets. The quiet of your evenings is often spent pondering the advice given, the decisions looming, the personalities clashing, the weight of the crown feeling particularly heavy when the man charged with leading your government is one you fundamentally mistrust or dislike. The backdrop to these personal dramas is a period of immense political activity, debates over extending the franchise. The ever-present and deeply divisive issue of Irish Home Rule that splits parties and inflames passions, colonial wars and anxieties in Africa and Asia, and the shifting sands of European power politics. Each prime minister brings these complex issues to your door, seeking your assent, your opinion, your signature on endless documents. The soft glow of the oil lamp illuminates their faces as they sit opposite you, their arguments unfolding, the fate of nations and the welfare of millions resting, in part, on the outcome of these intense, often solitary, conversations between sovereign and statesman, played out in the historic, hushed rooms of your ancient palaces. The intricate dance of politics, with its demanding statesmen and their often conflicting ambitions, continues to preoccupy your days, even as the years lengthen into decades, stretching far beyond the ordinary span of most reigns. The lamplit hours spent wrestling with dispatch boxes and the nuances of parliamentary debate are a constant in your life. Yet, amidst the ongoing duties and the persistent, quiet sorrow for Albert, moments of extraordinary public celebration arise, milestones that mark the sheer longevity and profound impact of your time on the throne. These are your jubilees, occasions when the entire nation, and indeed the vast empire, seem to pause and look towards you. Their queen, with a remarkable outpouring of affection and loyalty. You'd been on the throne so long. Most people couldn't remember a time without you. It was like you came with the fixtures and fittings of Britain itself. A permanent, reassuring presence, only adorned with significantly more diamonds and a much grander sense of history. The first of these great celebrations, your Golden Jubilee in 1887, marks 50 years as Queen. Half a century. The thought itself is staggering. You remember that young girl in Kensington, awakened in the pre-dawn gloom to be told she was monarch. And it seems a lifetime ago. Another world entirely. The London you knew then, a city of flickering gaslight and horse-drawn omnibuses, has transformed into a sprawling metropolis, the heart of a global empire, all under your steady, if often unseen, gaze. The preparations for the Golden Jubilee are immense. Streets are decorated with flags and bunting. Triumphal arches are erected, and a palpable sense of excitement fizzes in the air. On the appointed day, June 21st, you travel in an open landau through the cheering throngs of London to Westminster Abbey, the scene of your coronation all those years ago. The sound is deafening. A continuous wave of applause and shouts of "God save the Queen" that washes over you. Kings, princes, and dignitaries from across Europe and your own empire have gathered. Inside the ancient abbey, the service of thanksgiving is deeply moving. Your thoughts, inevitably, turn to Albert. How he would have rejoiced in this day. How his calm strength would have supported you. His absence is a poignant ache amidst the public jubilation, a private grief that never truly fades, even on the most glorious of occasions. Later, a grand banquet for royalty and distinguished guests, the glow of countless candles reflecting in jewels and gold plate, further marks the splendid occasion. The decade that follows sees your reign continue, your empire reach its zenith, and then an even more extraordinary milestone approaches 1897, your Diamond Jubilee. 60 years on the throne. No British monarch before you has reigned so long. The nation and the empire prepare for a celebration that will surpass even the Golden Jubilee in its magnificence and scale. The Jubilees weren't just a party, they were like the Olympics of imperial pageantry, with competitive flag-waving and synchronized marching on a global scale. Britain was definitely going for gold in the pomp and circumstance events. The Diamond Jubilee procession on June 22nd, 1897 is a breathtaking spectacle, a living tableau of your vast empire. Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee procession in 1897 famously included troops from all over the British Empire, a dazzling array of cavalry and infantry from Canada, Australia, India, Africa, and the myriad colonies and protectorates, each contingent in its distinctive uniform, marching proudly through the streets of London. It's a deliberate display of imperial might and unity, a symbol of the global family of nations under your maternal gaze. You yourself, now frail and preferring to avoid strenuous activity, participate in the procession seated in your carriage, a small, black-clad figure, yet undeniably the focal point of this immense celebration. The route is 6 miles long, lined with ecstatic crowds. Instead of a service inside Westminster Abbey, the main service of Thanksgiving is held on the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral, allowing you to remain in your carriage and enabling the vast crowds to witness the poignant ceremony. The sight of you, the aged queen, receiving the homage of your people and empire against the backdrop of Rennes' magnificent cathedral is an image that will be seared into the national consciousness. The outpouring of affection is genuine and overwhelming. You have transformed in the public imagination from the young, untried queen through the secluded, grieving widow into a revered grandmotherly figure, the grandmother of Europe. Thanks to the marriages of your many children and grandchildren into almost every royal house on the continent, you are a symbol of stability, continuity, and a certain steadfast Victorian morality. You'd gone from a young girl queen, navigating courtly intrigues, to the nation's slightly formidable but ultimately beloved grandma-in-chief. You wouldn't dare not finish your tea in her presence or track mud onto her carpets. But you also sensed she probably had a deep well of experience and a quiet, if rarely displayed, soft spot for a well-told story or a loyal heart. Historians continue to debate the extent to which the Jubilee celebrations genuinely reflected widespread, unadulterated popular monarchism versus a carefully orchestrated projection of imperial unity and national strength, designed to impress both domestic and international audiences. Certainly, the pageantry was meticulously planned, the symbols carefully chosen, yet the depth of personal affection for you, the monarch who had shared their nation's journey for 6 decades, through triumphs and tragedies, seems undeniable. The cheers, the flags, the bonfires lit on hills across the land, the street parties in humble neighborhoods, all speak to a powerful connection between you and your people. Your own feelings, as recorded in your journal during these extraordinary days, are a mixture of profound gratitude, humility, and an almost overwhelming sense of the immense passage of time. No one ever, I believe, has met with such an ovation as was given to me. You write after the Diamond Jubilee. The cheering was deafening, and every face seemed to be filled with real joy. Yet there is also a weariness, a sense of the long road traveled, the many loved ones lost along the way. Albert is, as always, foremost in your thoughts. How Albert would have rejoiced, you lament, the joy of the occasion forever tinged with the sorrow of his absence. These jubilees serve as a dazzling high watermark of your reign, and perhaps of the British Empire itself. They are a moment when the nation pauses to celebrate its achievements, its power, its global reach, all personified in your enduring figure. The nights of the Jubilees are ablaze with fireworks, their brilliant colors momentarily banishing the darkness, echoing the cheers and music that fill the streets. As the last rockets burst and fade, and the city slowly quiets, you are left in your rooms at Buckingham Palace, the sound of distant celebrations perhaps still a faint murmur on the warm night air. You reflect on the sea of faces, the waves of affection, the extraordinary journey from that young princess at Kensington to this aged Empress Queen, the heart of a worldwide empire, a figure revered and celebrated as few monarchs have ever been. The warmth of that loyalty, that love, is a comfort, a golden glow against the persistent, familiar landscape of your long and deeply felt widowhood. Word count 1419. Awaiting continue history. Snooze full doc script request. 2 hours custom gem. Show thinking. Section 14. The dazzling fireworks and jubilant cheers of your diamond jubilee eventually fade into the soft, cherished echoes of memory, leaving behind a profound sense of a life lived at the very center of a transformative age. The final years of your reign, and of the 19th century itself, begin to draw in, like the slow, inevitable dimming of a long summer day. The lamplight in your private rooms at Osborne, or in the familiar quiet of Balmoral, now illuminates a queen venerable in her years, a figure who has become almost synonymous with the very idea of Britain and its vast empire. The world outside your windows continues its restless motion, but within these walls, a more reflective, somber rhythm takes hold, though your sense of duty remains as steadfast as the ancient oaks in Windsor Great Park. Physical frailties begin to make their presence more keenly felt. Your eyesight, once sharp enough to scrutinize the finest print on state documents, is now failing, and your mobility is increasingly restricted. The grand staircases of your palaces are navigated with assistance, or more often now, you are moved in a wheelchair. Yet, your mind remains remarkably lucid, your will as strong as ever. You still demand to be kept fully informed, to have your say on matters of state. Even in her 80s, with an empire to oversee, you just knew there was a specific, unalterable time for tea, and woe betide anyone, statesman or servant, who dared to disrupt that sacred ritual. Some things, after all, remain non-negotiable, even for an empress. Your daughter, Princess Beatrice, your youngest, becomes your devoted companion and secretary, reading aloud the contents of the dispatch boxes, taking down your replies, her presence a constant comfort in these twilight years. The routines of your days at Osborne, with the scent of the sea air drifting through the open windows, or at Balmoral, amidst the rugged beauty of the highlands that Albert so loved, are carefully managed. There are drives in your pony cart, periods of rest, and always the relentless flow of official papers. As the century itself prepares to turn, it's impossible not to reflect on the almost unbelievable sweep of change you have witnessed. From a nation where news traveled at the speed of a galloping horse or a sailing ship, to one interconnected by humming telegraph wires and a vast network of railways. From an agricultural society to an industrial powerhouse. From quill pens to the first awkward clicks of typewriters. You'd seen so many inventions, the fruits of that restless Victorian ingenuity, from advanced steam engines to antiseptic surgery, from photographs to the very early precursors of moving pictures. You probably mused as Beatrice read aloud the latest scientific marvels. What will they possibly think of next, carriages that fly through the air? And in truth, such wonders were not so very far off. But the closing years of your reign are not to be entirely peaceful. A dark cloud gathers over South Africa with the outbreak of the Second Boer War in 1899. The conflict with the independent Boer republics is far more costly and difficult than anyone initially anticipates. News of early British setbacks, of sieges and heavy casualties, weighs heavily upon you. Once again, as in the Crimea decades before, your heart aches for your soldiers. You follow the course of the war with intense anxiety, knitting comforts for the troops, visiting wounded soldiers brought back to Britain, your presence a solace to them, even as their suffering deepens your own distress. The sight of young men, maimed and broken by this distant conflict, is a painful reminder of the human cost of empire, a somber counterpoint to the triumphant pageantry of the Jubilees. This war casts a discernible gloom over your final years. a troubling, unresolved discord as the symphony of the 19th century fades to its end. Personal losses, too, continue to accumulate, a cruel corollary of a long life. You have outlived so many your beloved Albert, of course, but also several of your adult children, including your second son, Alfred, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, who dies in 1900. The circle of your contemporaries, your trusted friends and advisors from earlier decades, has dwindled to almost nothing. She'd attended so many family funerals over the decades, received so many black-edged letters. She probably had a dedicated condolence letter template, sadly refined through too much practice. A poignant, perhaps necessary, part of being the revered, but increasingly isolated, matriarch of nearly all of Europe. The precise influence of Queen Victoria on British foreign policy during her later years, particularly concerning European dynastic politics, where her children and grandchildren were so enmeshed, is a matter that continues to attract scholarly attention. But her personal correspondence with her relatives on various thrones undoubtedly provided a unique, if informal, channel of communication and influence. Despite your age and your griefs, your sense of duty remains undimmed. The red dispatch boxes arrive daily, and with Beatrice's help, you attend to them diligently. At the time of your death, you were the longest reigning British monarch in history, a record that spoke volumes of your endurance and your unwavering commitment to the responsibilities placed upon you as a young girl so many decades before. The sheer weight of experience, the accumulated knowledge of prime ministers, international crises, social changes, and human nature must have been immense. As the new century dawns, 1900 giving way to 1901, there is a widespread, unspoken sense that an era is truly drawing to its close, an era that bears your name, the Victorian age, with all its immense achievements, its stark contrasts, its unshakable self-confidence, and its profound anxieties, is inextricably linked with your life, your image, your very being. In January 1901, while at your beloved Osborne House, your health, which has been gradually failing, takes a decisive turn for the worse. Surrounded by your remaining children and some of your grandchildren, including Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, you begin to slip away. The lamplight in your room casts a soft glow. The only sounds the hushed whispers of your family, the distant sigh of the sea, and perhaps the gentle rustle of the winter wind in the trees outside. The nation, the empire, the world holds its breath, knowing that the passing of this extraordinary woman will signify more than just the end of a life, but the closing of a monumental chapter in history. The Victorian sunset is at hand. The soft, diffused lamplight in your bedroom at Osborne House seems to grow gentler still, the air heavy with the unspoken understanding that your long, extraordinary journey is nearing its end. It is January 1901. Outside, the winter chill holds the Isle of Wight in its grip, but within your rooms, surrounded by your devoted children and grandchildren, a poignant gathering of European royalty, a quiet warmth prevails. You lie in your bed, weary from a life that has spanned almost the entirety of a remarkable century, a life lived under the constant, often heavy, mantle of the crown. Your thoughts, perhaps, drift back through the decades, a kaleidoscope of memories, Albert's beloved face, the cheers of jubilee crowds, the solemn weight of war, the innocent laughter of your children when they were young, the endless procession of faces, events, and decisions that have marked your reign, and then, peacefully, as the new century has barely begun, your journey concludes. Queen Victoria died on January 20, 1901 at Osborne House, the home Albert had designed for you both, a place of cherished memories. You are 81 years old. The news of your passing spreads with the speed of the telegraph across Britain, throughout the vast empire, and around the world. For most people alive, you are the only monarch they have ever known. It isn't just a queen who has passed. It was like the 19th century itself finally decided to pack its very substantial bags, filled with industrial marvels, imperial ambitions, and profound social changes, and say, "Right, that's my cue to gracefully exit the stage." A very long and dramatic century it was, too. A profound sense of loss settles over the nation, a feeling that an anchor has gone, an era has decisively closed. London, the vibrant heart of your empire, becomes a city draped in mourning, its customary hustle subdued by a shared grief. Church bells toll, their mournful sound drifting on the cold winter air, and flags are lowered to half-mast from Whitehall to the distant trading posts of Hong Kong and the plains of Canada. Your funeral is an event of solemn grandeur, meticulously planned according to instructions you yourself had laid down years before. She'd planned her own final arrangements with the same meticulous attention to detail she gave to a state banquet or the design of a new wing at Balmoral, right down to the color scheme and the guest list. No gloomy black for her final journey. Thank you very much. Instead, you had requested a white pall for your coffin and a military funeral, befitting a soldier's daughter and the sovereign of a great martial power. Your coffin, draped in white and gold, begins its journey from Osborne, carried aboard the royal yacht Alberta across the Solent, through an avenue of battleships firing ceremonial salutes, in London, and then on its final journey to Windsor. Vast, silent crowds line the streets, their faces etched with sorrow and respect, a sea of humanity paying its last respects to the Queen who had reigned over them for nearly 64 years. You are laid to rest beside your beloved Albert in the Royal Mausoleum at Frogmore in Windsor Great Park. The two of you reunited at last, beneath the soaring dome he had helped design, a quiet, private sanctuary after a lifetime lived in the public gaze. And what of your legacy? It is as vast and multifaceted as the age that bears your name. The Victorian era, a term that immediately conjures images of industrial might, of scientific breakthroughs that reshaped humanity's understanding of the world, of a sprawling global empire, but also of strict social codes, deep class divisions, and profound poverty alongside immense wealth. It was an age of extraordinary confidence and profound anxiety, of unwavering faith and unsettling doubt. The long-term global impact of the Victorian era, particularly the legacy of its imperial expansion and cultural influence, its technological leaps, and its societal norms, remains a subject of vigorous and evolving scholarly interpretation, debated and reassessed by each new generation. During your long reign, the monarchy itself underwent a profound transformation. You inherited a crown that still bore the memory of direct political power, and you leave it a revered, potent symbol, a focus of national unity and imperial identity, yet one that operates within the firm constraints of a constitutional democracy. You adapted, you endured, and in doing so, you helped to secure the monarchy's place in a rapidly modernizing world. Your personal qualities, that unshakable sense of duty, your deep and abiding love for Albert, which became a romantic ideal for the age, your strength of character, even your perceived stubbornness at times, all contributed to the public perception of Victoria, the Queen, the Mother, the Widow, the Empress. You left some very big shoes to fill, or rather, some very intricate and historically significant royal boots, and a world profoundly, irrevocably different from the one into which you were born. Your eldest son, Bertie, now takes the throne as King Edward VII, a new king for a new century, the Edwardian era dawning with its own distinct character, its own hopes and anxieties. The transition is smooth, a testament to the stability you had come to embody. Yet, there is an undeniable sense that the world has shifted on its axis. The certainties of the Victorian age, or what appeared to be certainties, are beginning to give way to the more turbulent currents of the 20th century. As the final salutes fade and the last mourners disperse, what remains is the quiet weight of history, the indelible mark of your passage, the Victorian age, with all its light and shadow, its grandeur and its grit, its soaring achievements and its poignant human dramas, will continue to fascinate, to be explored, to be understood in new ways. You, Alexandrina Victoria, the girl who became queen, the woman who defined an age, now belong to history, your story woven into the fabric of the world you helped to shape. The lamps of your era may have dimmed, but the legacy of your reign, in countless seen and unseen ways, continues to resonate. And now, as our journey through those long and eventful years comes to a gentle close, perhaps the distant sounds of that bygone London, the clip-clop of hooves on cobbled streets, the faint cry of a newsboy, the chime of Big Ben tolling the late hour, begin to soften and recede, merging with the quiet hum of your own peaceful surroundings. The grand staterooms of Buckingham Palace, the cozy warmth of Balmoral's fireside, the sunlit terraces of Osborne, all fade into the soft tapestry of memory. The weight of crowns and empires, the complexities of statesmen, the joys and sorrows of a long life lived so intensely, all can now be laid gently aside. Allow the stories of that distant past to become a soft murmur, a gentle lullaby, as the quiet of this present night enfolds you. Think of the enduring threads of human experience that connect us across time, the search for love, the burden of responsibility, the comfort of companionship, the sting of loss, and the quiet strength found in carrying on. These are the timeless currents that flow beneath the grand narratives of kings and queens, of empires and revolutions. Let your breathing deepen, your thoughts become lighter, drifting like a fallen leaf on a calm stream. There is nothing more for you to do now but rest, to allow the gentle embrace of slumber to welcome you. The cares of the day, the echoes of history, can all dissolve into the stillness. Feel the quiet peace settling around you, a soft blanket of tranquility. The night is a sanctuary, a time for renewal, for dreams to unfurl in their own mysterious way. And as you drift further, may your dreams be serene, untroubled by the clamor of the world, carrying you softly towards the dawn of a new day, refreshed and at peace